Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has taken the gaming world in 2025 by storm, with some of the most inventive gameplay in recent memory, a story that is both complex and meaningful, and a structure that, unlike some games, metaphor, encourages challenge runs. And to show you what I mean, I want to see if I can beat the entire game using only Lune. Lune is the mage of the expedition, and I think everyone on this channel should know how I feel about mages. And given her playstyle, I think there would be a lot more strategy I'd have to consider as opposed to Machine Gun Verso or Mael the part-time nuclear weapon. So with that said, here are the rules. Outside of scripted sequences, the only character we can use in battle is Lune, and within one particular scripted sequence, EXP game must be minimized. The use of other party members through the auto death picto is banned. This must be a true solo run. And finally, the game must be completed on the hardest difficulty, and I must complete all of Lune's relationship events. With that said, the game starts with an honest-to-god beautiful opening shot. Seriously, the fact that this game was created by just over 30 people is nothing short of incredible. But here we're introduced to Gustav.
Say thanks.
No, not you. And his adopted sister Mael. They're about ready to set off for the latest expedition to kill this giant woman known as the Paintress. For some quick background, every year in the game setting, Lumiere, there's an event called a Gommage, where the Paintress writes a number on her monolith, starting from 100 and descending by 1 every year until presumably 0. And every year, everyone who is the age of the number on the monolith dies. And this year, that includes Gustav's best friend and former love interest, Sophie, and we get to play through the entire sequence of events leading up to it. You'll find that I'll be glazing this game a lot in this video, but it just has to be said. The game does such a great job of getting you invested in the personal story of Gustav through spending a long period of time with him and Sophie, seeing his heartbreak when she's gommaged, and we're all immediately on board for wanting to kill the Paintress. Unfortunately, this challenge run is not about Gustav, and is instead about this woman, Lune. Lune is the expedition strategist, and while she may seem strict and no-nonsense, there are reasons that we'll find out as we play. But after we set sail for the continent, we're intercepted by someone who...
Which expedition are you from? Fall back!
But after getting our bearings, we have an easy scripted battle with Gustav, before having another scripted battle with Lune at our side. And now I should explain what makes Lune one of my favorite characters to play as. Every time Lune uses a skill, she generates an elemental stain. These can be fire, ice, electric, and earth, as well as the occasional light stain, which act as a battery for any element. One could play Lune as a certified fire spammer, since fire is undoubtedly the best element in the game because of the burn status, but consider for a moment using Lune's ice lance beforehand to generate an ice and light stain to increase the damage of the following immolation. Lune has a ton of combinations like these that make her really fun to play, and I look forward to showcasing them throughout this video. After beating the scripted encounter, we explore Spring Meadows, eventually getting into another scripted encounter with flying enemies which goes a lot better than I was expecting, and after leveling up enough to learn the Rock Slide skill, we head to this corner of the area for mime time, baby! These are some of my favorite enemies in the game solely because of the banger soundtrack that plays for them. But getting to the fight, the mimes will always get the first turn, and build a wall around themselves which reduces the damage they take by I want to say 90%, and in order to beat them, you need to build up this little yellow meter at the bottom of their health bar, which will eventually break them. And the easiest way to do that is to perform a counterattack, which can be done after perfectly parrying all of their attacks. The mimes also only have 2 attacks, a simple 3-hit combo which is easily parryable, and a 4-hit ghost hammer which... is not. But fortunately, I get the rhythm down and defeat the mime to unlock the famous baguette outfit for Gustav. And yes, I have customization turned on in cutscenes, cry about it in the comments. The rest of the area progresses smoothly, collecting all sorts of useful items like chroma, the game's currency, Pictos, which are passive abilities that increase stats, and eventually Lumina, which isolate the Pictos' effects after completing 4 battles with them equipped. And at the end of the area, we have to contend with the first major boss of the game, the Evoke. The Evoke has 2 main attacks, magic spikes that have a simple 1-2 parry timing, and a spear which... Yeah, so it's a probably good time to remind you that I'm playing on Expert, and while the parry timings seem the same as Expeditioner, the damage received on your end is greatly increased, to the point where I die in 2 hits. And what makes things worse is that the only break skill I can get for Lune at this point without overleveling is Rock Slide, and as I unfortunately learned, the Evoke absorbs earth damage, so breaking it is not an option. However, what is an option is exploiting its weakness to ice. So I use Ice Lance to apply the slow status, which reduces the amount of turns it gets, and cycling through the standard Ice Lance Immolation combo, we're able to take down the Evoke at level 5 without it even using its ultimate move. We then learned that Mael is actually alive, and in an area with flying water. Don't ask how that works. We get to the area and find a strange door that leads to a manor, where Mael is safe and sound, protected by this... interesting fellow, who then teaches us how to play Super Mario Bros. Next we get introduced to Noko the Gestrel. Gestrels are these goofy little creatures who love fighting, and actually hold back their items until you beat them in a fight. Never in my life would I think you'd have to fight a merchant in a game to get their wares. This game is truly something else. There are also 2 special enemies in Flying Waters. First is the Burgeon, this giant demogorgon creature who spits stomach acid and performs hand-to-hand combos of various lengths. It also has another gimmick where it will eat a party member, and the only way to get them back is to break it. However, if you play solo, it will not do this. It takes a few tries to learn the exact parry timings, but ultimately, we're able to bring it down and obtain the really good Augmented Counter 1 Picto, which increases the damage of our counterattacks. As for the second special enemy, it's mime time again, baby! The rest of the area goes smoothly as we unlock new Pictos and skills. One such skill being Thermal Transfer. This skill is actually one of Lune's worst in terms of overall damage, but is actually one of her best, as it gives back 4 AP anytime you hit a burning enemy. And it also lets her act immediately under conditions that are really inconsistent, and apparently bugged, but that got patched. And we're about to put this skill to the test against the next major boss, Goblu, who I absolutely did not expect to be as hard as it was. Goblu has 2 main attacks, a 3-hit jump attack with a delayed 3rd hit, and a 2-hit melee. The jump attack timing is normally what catches me off guard, but the damage is actually quite tankable. Until it's not. See, Goblu eventually summons flowers that you need to destroy with free aim shots. If you leave them be, the blue ones will give him shields, which protect against damage, and the red ones permanently buff his attack. And if he does this too much... But don't worry, as shooting the flowers is actually manageable. Until it's not. Because when it reaches 25% health, it will summon so many flowers that shooting them all is just impossible. Like it or not, it will buff itself, and you will die. In fact, on my winning attempt, the fucker decided to bring out all his flowers at once, and absorb them before I could even get a turn. Like, wow, that's fair. But fortunately, I lock in, and with the help of the extremely overpowered Mayhem skill, I'm able to take down Goblu after an hour of recording attempts. After that fiasco, we set up camp and see that No Face McGee offers to upgrade our weapons, and more importantly, increase our Lumina points. While this won't be significant now, when we get to the endgame, you'll see that stacking all these Lumina effects will result in some nutty damage. We're then pointed to the Gestural Village, whose chef, Gulgra, can tell us how to reach the Paintress. But first we need to take a detour into the Ancient Sanctuary. The enemies here are all Gestrals, who pilot these mech things called Sakapatats, or sacks of potatoes. And, while annoying to fight, the Catapult one gives Lune, no joke, one of her best weapons early game, the Trebuchem. which generates a random stain with every free aim shot. The utility of this weapon cannot be understated, and you'll see it's the weapon of choice for most scenarios prior to Act 3. Before leaving the Sanctuary, we face the ultimate Sakapatat, who despite the usual growing pains you come to expect, is pretty easy, especially when we break it and shoot off its cannon arm. Something I didn't know you could do, but hey, more you know. After another mime time, which unlocks Lune's baguette outfit, we make it to the Gestural Village and enroll in a tournament to prove our strength. The enemies here are all pretty easy and go down in no time, and in our last fight, we're introduced to the last surviving member of Expedition 33, CL. And after a final bout, which I did not lose on my first attempt, she joins our party. I then head over to meet Eskie, an ancient being who can help us cross the ocean, as long as we can get him his rock back. A rock guarded by his arch-nemesis, Francois. Francois only has one attack, the strongest ice attack ever. However, we're able to parry it with the strongest counter ever. Unfortunately, being that Francois can't even move, it's obvious he doesn't have Eskie's rock. But he does tell us where it is, the Stone Wave Cliffs. But before I do that, I kill another Burgeon to unlock the Healing Parry Picto, which lets me heal slightly every time I parry, which is incredibly good for sustainability. I also make a pit stop to the hidden Gestural Arena, where I have to refight the same Gesturals I beat in the tournament, only way stronger now. But beating them unlocks the best set of Pictos for any solo run. Empowering, protecting, and accelerating Last Stand fully buff Lune for 3 turns at the start of battle if solo. Solo fighter gets her 50% extra damage when fighting alone. And most insane of all, Last Stand Critical grants a 100% chance to land critical hits if fighting solo, making the luck stat completely irrelevant, and increasing damage by a further 50%. And just by having Solo Fighter and Last Stand Critical, I just more than doubled my damage. Actually insane. When I finally reach the cliffs, I see there are a lot of interesting enemies, like the Greatsword Cultist, who stabs itself in order to gain shield. Lamau. And we also get the incredible First Strike Picto, which does exactly what you expect. And now, ladies and gentlemen, if you were disappointed by my performance against the last few bosses, let me introduce the Lamp Master, or as I call it, the Fraud Master. Look at him, wearing his little fraud hat, thinking he could be part of the team. Yeah, despite most people I talk to saying this boss is really hard, I never had that much trouble with him, even on my first playthrough. In fact, Phase 1 I do completely hitless because of Lune's insanely overpowered Mayhem skill. I didn't go over it yet, but Mayhem takes all of Lune's stains and sends them hurling at the enemy for way more damage than it has any right to. Phase 2 is a bit trickier since he builds up the Fraudmaster's Light, a sword attack that gets stronger every time it's used. However, by shooting its lamps in a specific order, it can be prevented, and soon enough, we expose the fraud and obtain Eskie's rock. You know, the expedition got off to a rough start, but I think things are looking up.
Run. We've done nothing to you. We should be on the same side. For those who come after. Right?
You promise!
It's honestly rare something in a game makes me cry, and Gustav's death was one of those times. From how sudden it was, to the music, to the emotional attachment you forged with him through Act 1, it was all masterfully handled. It's also rare for a game to kill off the main character not even halfway through, which was incredibly risky, but again, pulled off really well. Especially since Gustav's dynamic in the party is replaced by this guy, who says his name is Verso. But this run is not about Verso, and while you might think I continue the story from here, I instead take a detour to the Dark Shores, which is the place we started the game at. While the noirs here are way too strong for my level, we're not here for them, but instead the extremely overpowered In Medias Res Picto. This Picto applies 3 shields at the start of battle, but also halves our max HP. For like 1 turn. Yeah, this Picto is actually bugged, since after any heal, your HP returns to normal, so it's literally just free shields. But the main reason we want this Picto now is its absolutely ludicrous 1300 defense. The damage reduction that comes from this is nothing short of amazing, and this Picto won't be leaving Lune until Act 3. If ever. In Medias Res combined with the solo Pictos is enough to breeze through the forgotten battlefield. Literally nothing can stand in my way. Except for the Chromatic Luster. Chromatic enemies are superpowered versions of regular enemies with expanded movesets. While the game threw a few of them at me early, the Luster is the first one I actively pursued. And despite it telegraphing its parry timing with its claws, it still took me a few tries to get the parry timing down. But eventually I beat it to unlock the Energizing Parry Picto, which increases the action points we gain from parrying from 1 to 2. And the next boss is the perfect showcase of that. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Duelist, my favorite boss in the entire game. Everything from his design, his aura, the music, oh my god, he is so goddamn cool. I am very normal about this boss, guys, I swear. But for the fight itself, I'd describe it as difficult but fair. He's the first boss who uses jump attacks mid-combo, combo strings that go as long as 9 hits, and use attacks called gradients that we need to perform a special counter for. This boss is a fun and satisfying test of your ability to parry, and is easily the boss who makes you feel the best for doing so. And given the amount of practice I had with his moveset, as well as Lune's absurd damage output, I'm able to beat the Duelist on my first attempt. But I make sure to draw out the fight long enough to let his banger soundtrack play out. After the best boss fight ever, the party takes a moment to lay Gustav to rest and proceed to Monoko's station for a fight against the man himself. Monoko is a really strong Gestural and an old friend of Verso. He's a great character who will unfortunately be warming the bench with everyone else. And while his boss fight can be tricky with a really hard-hitting Nevron combo, In Medias Res makes it completely survivable, and the Stalak fight afterwards is not really noteworthy. With Monoko on the team, we set out for Old Lumiere, where the heart of the Paintress resides, and by destroying that, we'll be able to weaken her. There's a section that forces the party to split up, and while Lune can hold her own just fine, there's a scripted fight we have to do with just Mael and Verso. Fortunately, I knew this fight was coming and spec'd a bit in Mael and Verso so they could handle it. Albeit very slowly. But after separating from Verso, Mael is able to find the Paintress's heart. But unfortunately, she's protected by the old man, His real name is Renoir, and is actually Verso's father. With everyone surprised by this revelation, even though I was able to guess it from the moment Verso showed up, we get ready to face Renoir head on. Now, the fight automatically puts Verso and Mael in the party. However, since auto-death is banned in this playthrough, I need to either wait for Renoir to kill them, or let Renoir kill me so I can reset at the flag and dismiss them. Both end up happening, but don't think I just whiffed that attempt because Renoir is no joke. If Duel Least was difficult but fair, Renoir is fair but difficult. He's the first boss who draws out his combos with really awkward timings. The most egregious example being his attack from a distance combo, which what even is this? Does he really think spinning is a good trick? But after enough practice, the combos are really easy to get down. Until they're not. See, when he reaches about half HP, Renoir extends two of his easier combos with more difficult parry timings, one of which ends in a bonus stun effect, and no joke, I died several times because I had him one hit away and he busted out either the stun or his insta-kill. And yes, he has an insta-kill. And on my winning attempt, he tried to do this again, but that trick can only work so many times before I catch on, and I'm able to pull out the Uno reverse card and take down Renoir. For now. He's the main antagonist, he'll be back later. But not before Verso's sister comes out, does some cryptic nonsense, and then leaves. Okay then. With the old Lumiere plan a bust, we need a new strategy, and after some debate, we decide to harvest enough chroma to break the Monolith's barrier and confront the Paintress directly. And the only way to get that much chroma is to kill beings called Axons. Axons are towering colossi, and some of the strongest beings on the continent. There are 4 in total. One was already killed in Old Lumiere, and its chroma is long gone. Another is on a mountain that's too high for us to reach. That just leaves one to the east and one to the west. But before doing any of that, I decide to head back south to get the Recovery Picto, which grants us 2000 extra HP and recovers 10% HP at every turn start. Pairing this with healing and energizing parry ensures that we rarely ever need healing items again. And with this new tool, we head over to the first Axon to the east, which is probably my favorite of the 2 areas. Visage is a really cool area, as the game gives you freedom to tackle it however you want. You can head straight to the Axon if you want, or go down these branching paths to make the boss easier. Since I have nothing better to do, I head straight to the Axon to see what happens. Visage, or He Who Guards Truth with Lies, has a gimmick where it cycles through different masks in a mirror, each one doing something different. However, by shooting their eyes with free aim, the masks will break, and they'll be locked out of using that attack. If you destroy all the masks, Visage will blow itself up and leave you at 1 HP, just in time for Phase 2.
Great art is both window and mirror. Whether it's your mask or theirs.
Harmless, huh?
He's the real Axon.
Child, we all need masks, but how you use them.
Yup. Turns out this wannabe duelist is the true Axon, and ooh boy is he something. Despite me dying before I can even act, here's where the gimmick comes in. At the start of the fight, the Mask Keeper summons 3 giant masks. The Joy Mask heals him, the Sadness Mask applies exhaust, which prevents AP gain, and the Anger Mask gives the Mask Keeper an additional turn. However, if you go along the branching paths, you can destroy the masks, and you're just left with his standard moveset. I choose to destroy the mask because I want to explore the whole area and get all the loot, including Verso's best weapon, Double Burn, which applies double burn, and Mime Time, baby! I also kill a few chromatic enemies in the overworld just to style on them, before heading back to face the Mask Keeper. For Phase 1, instead of destroying all the masks, I like to limit Visage to just 1 or 2 masks that I have an easier time dealing with. Those being the red and purple ones. and then slowly depleting his HP from there. And just because he lost his advantage, don't think the Mask Keeper is a slouch. I compared him earlier to Duelist, and that's because he's the logical next step from him. He keeps his predecessor's long, tricky combo strings, and adds an additional gimmick at half health where he gains a shield for every hit he lands on you. Normally this is really hard to deal with, but I managed to pull through with Lune's absolutely stupid Elemental Genesis, which requires a fire, ice, earth, and lightning stain to be built up, but outputs ridiculous damage in the process. To be exact, 79,000 if all hits deal the 9,999 damage cap, and we can build up to this attack easily by using Lune's elemental trick, which generates each of the corresponding stains if she lands critical hits, which thanks to last stand critical is always, and with one final burn, we take down the Mask Keeper and steal his chroma. We then take this victory and head straight for the next Axon, Siren, she who plays with wonder. And while I prefer Visage in terms of gameplay, Siren beats him out in terms of spectacle and the absurd pictos we can get here. Most notably, effective heal, which doubles all healing we receive. So healing parry now heals for 200 per activation, which is absolutely amazing. What also makes this area easier are the enemies. The Beniswar, I think that's how you say that, roast me in the comments, is the only moderately challenging one, and the rest are all flying enemies who die in one turn to free aim. Well, with the exception of two mini-bosses. Up first is the Testard, who makes Siren's dress and applies shields to her if you don't kill him, so naturally we want to do that. His gimmick is that he inflicts the curse status, which kills us after a certain amount of turns. However, Cleansing Tint, which we got all the way back from beating the Evic, makes this a non-issue. Beyond that, he only really has easy jump counters, which we exploit to take him down and earn the Anti-Charm Picto, which prevents the charm status. I never removed this Picto in my playthroughs, so I have no idea what charm even does, but I do not want to find out. The second mini-boss is the Glissando, a snake made of Siren's cloth. It has a few tricky combos, but again, nothing I can't handle. Oh yeah, also mime time, baby! With some minor prep work beforehand, we head in to confront Siren, and it's here where we see how good my investment in defense and health pictos truly is. It's honestly kind of sad how the Chromatic Greatsword Cultist dealt more damage to me than Siren. Like, I don't even have to try to learn her moves, because she deals such negligible damage that I can easily heal off whatever she throws at me. Meanwhile, Elemental Genesis does the full 79,000 damage, even on resisted hits, and after only 3 turns, I take down Siren and gain the extremely overpowered Energizing Turn Picto, which grants me 1 additional action point at the start of every turn, and making my strategies a lot more seamless. With the Axon's Chroma forged into Mael's Barrier Breaker weapon, we use it to do just that and enter the monolith. But before any of that, I head over to challenge Sprong in the overworld and... Okay, you know what, yep, that's fair. I'll be back in Act 3. After a one-sided fight against the Colossal Paintress, the True One reveals herself, traumatizes Mael a bit, and then retreats into the monolith. The monolith is a compilation of every major area and enemy up until this point. The first and third floor specifically have refights against the Evic and Ultimate Saka Patat, which is pretty cool. But there are 2 special enemies in the monolith, the Clair and the Obscur, who appear sporadically on every floor, as well as together for another mime time, and again with a mini-boss which combines both into the Clair Obscur. And now it's safe to roll credits. At the end of the monolith, just before the final barrier that leads to the Paintress, Renoir shows back up for one last stand against us. And to be honest, the fight went a lot smoother than I thought it would. Renoir still has all his combos from his last fight minus the mask attack, but when he gets to 50%, he'll summon a Chroma Lion who fully heals him and permanently gives him an extra turn, which he spends with new mix-ups from the Lion. The Lion certainly complicates things, but what balances this fight out in my favor is Lune's most powerful non-gradient skill, Lightning Dance, which if all hits do the damage cap, outdamages Elemental Genesis for 119,000 damage. This has the ability to shred Renoir's health. However, in typical Renoir fashion, he pulls out some bullshit that makes me lose. However, I only died 3 times to Renoir 2, half as many times as his first fight, and each attempt I was actually able to get into Phase 2 with no issue. A fight which had me at a loss on my first playthrough ended up being much more manageable this time around, and with a final mayhem and a gommage from No Face at Mael, this ends Renoir's story. Wait a minute. With nothing more standing in our way, the time has finally come to slay the Paintress, and the boss fight goes exactly how I expected. Fun fact, in my recordings folder, Renoir 2 and the Paintress have an entire subfolder dedicated to them, and while Renoir 2 did not live up to that hype, the Paintress certainly did. The Paintress loves, and I mean loves, to draw out her attack strings, even more than Renoir, while also throwing out attacks that need split-second dodges. Special shout out to this attack in Phase 2, which I just could not get the timing for. But even Phase 1 is a lot to handle because of her destructive combos, including Void Meteors, which can stun you if you get hit twice, a really easy gradient, debuffs, more debuffs, and the Dio special. This is all without mentioning her over 1 million HP, which takes an eternity to deplete even with all my attacks hitting the damage cap. After enough practice though, I'm able to push her past Phase 1 and get her into Phase 2, where SKA takes flight and we face the Paintress with the aid of her Colossus. And this is where things truly get nuts, as she combines every attack type except gradients into her patterns, which require absolute mastery of the game to survive. I did not master it, but I came close enough to heal off even her strongest combos. But eventually, with one final gradient and a scripted Phase 3 that ends in a Genesis, I'm able to break the cycle. Triumphant, everyone returns to Lumiere as heroes, when suddenly Okay, so a lot just happened, and the explanation for why that happened is very complex. So in the interest of time, here's the cliff notes. The world of Lumiere and its inhabitants aren't technically real, and actually exist in a magical painted canvas made by Verso. However, real world Verso, not the one we've been following, who unfortunately died in a fire not too long ago. His family, including the Paintress, whose real name is Aline, her husband Renoir, and his 2 siblings Clea and Alicia are all grieving for him. However, Aline went a bit off the deep end and submerged herself in Verso's canvas so she can be close to the remaining piece of his soul, which is represented by this small child. The real Renoir, who's actually No Face, and Clea have been working together to try and expel Aline from the canvas and gommage all the residents so the family can sort out their grief in a healthier way. So yes, this game is actually about grief and escapism, and how the latter can be detrimental to the former. And while I like the twist in Act 3, I know a lot of people don't, because it essentially tells us that the people of Lumiere and the expeditions, who we've all grown to love, don't matter and aren't real. And that's not the point. Yeah, they're technically not real people, but they are sentient and matter to Mael, who is actually the real-world Alicia. But most importantly, they matter to us, the players, which is all that could be wanted. And I can't think of a better way to exemplify that than by starting Act 3 with Lune's social link. Yup, that's right, the game has Persona-style social links, but unlike Persona, there's no time limit on them, so you're free to blitz through them all in Act 3. But I obviously take my time through Lune's to see what it's about, and I have to say I quite enjoyed it. Lune grew up as the daughter of two prominent researchers. She'd frequently want approval and validation from them, but all they really valued her for was a helper for their research. They also instilled Lune with the notion that the mission to kill the Paintress came above all else, something that she took to heart and even pressured Mael about earlier in the game. Eventually though, Lune's parents departed as part of Expedition 46, and while Verso never traveled with them, he does know that they fell on the outskirts of Seren's Island, and he offers to take Lune there for closure. Upon arriving, we see the Nephron who killed them was the chromatic Glissando, who... Okay, so stun is a problem I can't avoid anymore. So I head over to the chromatic Patang for the anti-stun Picto, but... Okay, it seems my lack of turns is catching up to me. So I go to refight Sprong and... Okay, I need to do some prep. See, there are already a lot of really good Expedition 33 challenge runs on YouTube already. But one thing I don't like is that most of them completely disregard Act 3 and head straight to the finale. And while I understand wanting to make Renoir 3 as challenging as possible, there's so much content in Act 3 that I feel not covering it is doing this part of the game a disservice. So I intend to complete Act 3 to the best of my ability to give you all the best possible experience, even if it means dying over and over and over again. But fear not, as I have a plan to get through this, and the first stop is the Dark Gestural Arena, a fighting ring that the Gestrals built so many balloons for that it flew up into the sky. No, I'm not making that up. And a place where we fight chromatic Sakapatats, starting with the Catapult one, who, upon defeat, levels up Lune by 3, and upgrades the Trebuchet from 19 to 25. It's also worth noting that the biggest upgrade Act 3 gives us is the Painted Power Picto, which allows us to exceed the 9,999 damage cap, and do as much damage as we want. And while this power boost is notable, I'm still not strong enough to stand a chance against most of Act 3. However, beating Sprong will change that for reasons you'll find out in a second. But even with a better weapon, Sprong is still really tough. Well, I mean, okay, kind of. See, his parry timings are usually generous, and you can nail them down with enough practice. The issue is that if you mess up, Sprong has such high damage that it's essentially a one-shot. So you need to play this fight out perfectly, which I'm eventually able to do to defeat Sprong and unlock the overpowered Cheater Picto, which allows us to play twice in a row, unconditionally. And this is exactly what we need to finish off the rest of the Dark Gestural Arena, Golgra, and the Chromatic Glissando. The Glissando is especially noteworthy as it unlocks what is, in my opinion, Lune's best weapon. Now, when you hear me say that, you must be thinking, man, what are you talking about? You haven't even gotten Kralum or Scavarum. And while both are pretty good, let me read you what Coralum's passives are. Level 4. 100% crit chance when 4 stains are active simultaneously. Obviously not notable because we have Last Stand Critical. Level 10. 20% increased damage for each consecutive turn without taking damage. Can stack up to 5 times. So essentially, I get double damage if I can go 5 turns in a row without taking damage. Something I can do quite easily despite what I've shown in this video. And lastly, level 20. Critical hits apply burn. Yes, you read that right. Every time I crit, which is always, I apply 1 burn stack. And thanks to double burn, that becomes 2 per crit. So let's say we do the Elemental Trick in the Genesis combo. Trick is 4 hits, so 4 times 2 is 8 burn stacks, and then Genesis is 8 hits, so that's 16 burn stacks, plus the 8 from Trick gives us 24 burn stacks just by doing this combo. But combining this with free aim shots, and a Picto we're about to get really soon, we'll be able to apply 50 burn stacks in a single turn. And when this weapon is fully upgraded and spec'd into, it can deal some absolutely insane damage. But to get one of these Pictos, we need to start what is probably my favorite area in the entire game, the Flying Manor. The Flying Manor is a super endgame area that features refights against a few of the prominent story bosses. Normally, I'm not a big fan of when games have boss refights, as most of the time, it just serves as lazy asset reuse. Looking at you, Ryota Remastered. But in this case, I actually quite like it, as the refights all have a narrative function that we'll find out at the end of this dungeon. The Flying Manor also features encounters with every major Nevron enemy in the game, except for the ones on the Axon Islands, and Noir. But besides those two, everyone is here. Lanciers, Chevaliers, Cultists, multiple Burgeons, a Patank, and of course, Mime Time, baby! But as for the boss refights, the first one I try to beat is Goblu. The reason why I go for Goblu first is the Picto right next to it. Energizing Shots, which will occasionally allow us to refund AP on free aim shots, and this, combined with the Energy Master Picto we'll get from the reincarnation of Samael, will let us fire off free aim shots like they're a machine gun. But on to Goblu, it tries to reenact the beginning of the run by killing me with her jump attack. However, I'm saved by the Enduring Soul Picto I got from Renoir 2, and this extra life is what I needed to finish it off. However, it won't help against... I don't know what happened between the Forgotten Battlefield and now, because I am suddenly not able to parry this guy. Which sucks because on Expert, at the level I'm at, he just one-shots me. Like, what? Duelist! My guy! I thought we were friends! Duelist has 15 million HP on Expert, and has absurdly high defenses to boot. And in case you haven't noticed, my damage sucks! He also went to the Matador school of having absurdly high agility, since sometimes he'll be able to act 4 times in a row, so to combat this, I obtained 3 new Pictos. Inverted Affinity, gotten from the merchant in the Forgotten Battlefield, causes the inverted status, but also increases my damage by 50% with that effect. Then there's Tainted, obtained from the Chromatic Galt in the Stonewave Cliffs, and provides a 10% damage increase per negative status effects on us, which results in a 65% damage increase. And for the speed issue, I do a side quest for this guy in Minoko Station, who requires me to beat this guy in Frozen Hearts to gain Greater Rush. Combining this with accelerating shots obtained from the merchant in the Flying Manor, this ensures that I can almost always have the rush effect active and cut his turns back. And this proves to be the right play, as with this combination with Pictos, I'm able to take down the Duelist with Lune's new nuclear warhead. But if you thought this guy was something, then hoo boy, wait until you see. The fight I was looking forward to the least. The Avec trio is not the hardest fight in the game, but is definitely the most annoying. Each of the Avecs have their own weaknesses: Thunder to Earth, Frost to Electric, and Flame to Ice. However, they also absorb their respective elements, making it so I can't use Elemental Trick to build up my 4 stains I need for Genesis. What's even worse is that they also resist everything else except for void damage. If I were smart, I would have combined Lune's Troubadour weapon with the Painter Picto gotten right upstairs, which would have converted the physical damage from free aim shots into void element. However, I didn't think of that at the time, but we'll put a pin in that for later. So instead, I went in guns blazing, which took a lot more attempts than I'd like to admit, since the Avecs have some pretty annoying attacks, like the spear and their ult, which the tutorial one forgot to use. And this is all without mentioning the other gimmick they have, where 2 of the 3 will just become invincible, forcing you to only damage 1 at a time. But on my winning attempt, I was able to break both Thunder and Frost, which only left Flame invincible. For some reason. And I used Genesis to kill both Thunder and Frost, leaving only Flame, who I can't parry as my weapon will just heal it. Things get really close when it uses its ult, but I barely managed to dodge the final hit, and before long, I beat the Avec Quartet. Yeah, so there's a funny little bug in the game, where if you kill an enemy with a Lightning Strike skill, there's a chance that the kill will count twice. So here, I killed 2 Flame Avecs, which granted me greater rewards. Absolutely hilarious. And speaking of hilarious, the final boss refight is the Fraud Master, who turns out to be an even bigger fraud since there's no phase 2, and I take him down without any damage taken. Like, seriously, the Gargant I fought on my way here put up more of a fight. Get your shit together, man! But after once again making a fool of that clown, we have all the necessary pieces to confront the final boss of the manor. The creator of the Nevrons, Clair. Not to be confused with the Clair from the beginning of Act 3, this is the painted version, who the real one hated so much that she kidnapped her, stripped her of her free will, and forced her to make Nevrons for the rest of time. Basically, if a Nevron didn't appear on the Axon Islands, that was painted Clair, and now we have to set her free from her imprisonment. Now, many people say Clair is the second hardest boss in the game, and to be honest, she's the third hardest. We'll get to the real second hardest later, but in my opinion, Clair is simultaneously really easy and really difficult. And let me explain why. Clair spends the fight using different Nevron combos. If you don't perfect parry her, she'll heal at the end of her turn for 500,000 HP on lower difficulties, and over 1,000,000 on Expert. Clair tests your ability to listen for sound cues for the right parry openings, and let me say, I definitely passed. As with the exception of the Agile Nevron combo, all of her attacks have really easy to listen for sound cues, and I mostly had no problem parrying her. So if that's the case, why do I have an hour and a half of straight attempts dedicated to her? Well, at half health, she does this. Yup, unlike every other Burgeon in the game, this one eats you and there is literally nothing you can do about it. And the weird thing is, I was simultaneously dealing so much damage I could quickly get her to half health, but not enough damage to finish her before the Burgeon would eat me. So just like with Duelist, I need to prepare and get stronger, and the best way to do that in the endgame is... The Endless Tower is a series of trials that get progressively more difficult as they go on. You'll start by fighting low-level Nevrons who die in one turn, and eventually progress to at least one, if not more enemies who are chromatic, including some chromatics who don't even appear in the overworld. While I'm going to come back to this place later, I need to progress to Stage 5 Trial 3, where we have to fight the Chromatic Aberration. A fight that is normally very annoying because of its absurdly high HP, but with my current Pictos in Lumina, Lune is easily able to melt him like butter. And from this fight, we obtained a Charging Critical Picto, which raises the gradient bar by 20% once per turn on critical hit, which thanks to Last Stand Critical is always. I next get the Warming Up Picto from the now vastly underleveled Gross Tete, which gives me 20% more damage after 5 turns. And finally, I head to the Sky Island, beat up a Chromatic, and head further past to obtain the Greater Slow Picto. See, I found through testing that having Greater Rush wasn't enough for Clair, and she still had too many turns. I wanted to control the fight as much as I could, so because of that, I need Greater Slow to further minimize her turn economy, and maximize my own. This is also the point where I beat Samael to unlock the Energy Master Picto, allowing me to occasionally be refunded 2 AP on free aim shots instead of 1. With all these preparations and a couple extra levels I got from the Endless Tower, I head back to challenge Clair, and despite my changes, things still don't go that well. All the changes I made were great ones. In fact, with Greater Slow, I now get 3 actions to her every 1. But the fact remained I just could not sweet spot 50% before Clair would get a turn and eat me. But with enough perseverance, I eventually got the attempt I needed. On the first turn, I applied 4 stains with Elemental Trick, and free aim to get over 50 burn on her, and then proceeded to miss my next free aim shots because of her janky hitbox. But I used base attacks to apply Defenseless and end the first round with 64 burn stacks, which end up dealing 1 million damage to her. She then uses her easiest combo on me, and I spend the next cycle stacking more burns. However, instead of reapplying slow, I instead use Lune's Stormcaller song, which generates 2 lightning strikes per hit I deal. I then purposely let myself get hit by her next combo as to not let her HP go down too quickly, and then on her next cycle, she uses the Violent Neveron combo, which I have no difficulty parrying, and this brings her to the 50% threshold. And now, this is it. I do a few free aim shots to get a mark on her, and with my gradient bar full, I unleash the power of the sky. And with this, we have completed the Flying Manor and set Clair's spirit free. And as a reward, we get Clair's outfit for Lune, which looks really good on her, and I replaced the baguette outfit with it, while still keeping her stylish sunglasses. From here, the next logical step is to finish up the Endless Tower, and most of the floors are actually pretty easy, and I clear most of them in a single elemental trick in the Genesis combo. That is until I get to Stage 9 Trial 3, and hit a major roadblock, a Flame and Frost Avec accompanied by a Chromatic Dancer. And this fight specifically was made to hard counter Lune. See, I already explained the elemental affinities of the Avecs, but dealing with them is not the issue since the tower has been throwing Avecs at me for the past 3 waves. No, the issue is the Dancer, as it will rotate between absorbing fire and ice, and this combination once again completely shuts down my entire build. But that is not even the main issue. Oh no. The main issue is this. The Dancer always goes before the Avecs, and has one of the fastest combos in the entire game. So much so that I can't react to all of the hits in time, and it just straight up kills me. I die over and over and over again, just because I can't parry this one combo. Most people would just say get good and learn the timings, but I have a better solution. I head to Old Lumiere to fight that version of the Dancer for 2 reasons. First is that it drops the really good Picto Revive Paradox, which lets me play immediately upon being revived. The caveat being it overrides Cheater and will give me only 1 turn upon revival, but that should be all I need. The second is a very well known and funny exploit you can do here. In this fight, the Dancer summons minions, and at the end of the fight, they will drop Colors of Lumina. And if you keep killing the minions over and over again, their rewards will increase. And while I only have the patience to get 65 Colors of Lumina, I've seen this number go up to 1600. I also killed this Thunder effect for the Breaking Death Picto, which instantly fills an enemy's break bar if I die. This combined with the Sniper Picto, Trobadorum, and the Painter Picto ensures that I can instantly break the Dancer if I die, and from there, it's only a matter of time before the Avecs meet the same fate as the ones before them. The tower after that point had some roadblocks, shout out to the Sword Bros on 10-2, but even faced with opponents like the Duelist, the Mask Keeper, and a Polar Bear from Arlington, Texas, and reaching the final floor, and the true second hardest boss of the game. Renoir and Aline reunited as Painted Love. Despite being 2 opponents, Painted Love shares 1 health bar, and you only need to kill 1 to win. However, they have a total of 45 million HP on Expert, and they make sure to back up their defense with offense. While Renoir mainly uses moves from phase 1 of his fight, Aline combines moves from both phases of her fight whenever she wants, including the absurdly fast one that I still can't get the timing for. And as to be expected, these two absolutely love to delay their combos, and speed them up at random intervals. Special shout out to these two attacks from Renoir, which are the only two moves he has that actually kill me. Like, there were several attempts where I had them just one hit away, and then Renoir, once again in typical Renoir fashion, pulls out his bullshit and kills me with one of these two moves. Even with higher defense and HP, these two's combos are way too much to handle, which is when I realized I finally needed to pull out my trump card. Confident and Confident Fighter. The former decreases oncoming damage by 50%, and the latter raises my damage by 30%, both of which, however, disable the ability to heal. But with high HP Pictos, I should have a sufficient enough buffer against mistakes. And I do indeed, as after equipping these effects, the oncoming damage becomes a lot more manageable. It does come incredibly close, but with one final burn proc, I'm able to end the Lover's Quarrel and beat the Endless Tower. After beating a slightly tougher version of the Fraudmaster, I progress Mael's social link and unlock her optional dungeon and the third Axon, the Reacher. And before I go further, I should probably elaborate on something. I refer to Clair and Painted Love as the third and second hardest bosses respectively. So you must be wondering then, who is the hardest boss in Clair Obscur? Well, the answer to that is this guy. Simon. However, I will not be fighting him in this run, and it's not for the reason you might think. See, I have no doubt I can beat Simon with just Lune, even with his Go Mage gimmick. The issue is the process in which you unlock him. Simon is located in the Abyss, an area located in Renoir's drafts beneath the Monolith, and to unlock Renoir's drafts, you need to progress SKA's social link to rank 6, which unlocks his ability to swim underwater. However, his rank 6 event is locked behind an easy rematch against Francois. A rematch which must be done with just Verso. So because of this technicality, both Renoir's drafts and Simon are inaccessible for this challenge. And the Reacher is kind of in the same position, as the final fight of the dungeon is a mirror match against Painted Alicia, which must be done with just Mael. But while that battle is off limits, the rest of the dungeon is still on the table, and there's one particular thing I need to do here.
Perfect!
With everything I feel is necessary in Act 3 completed, it's finally time to confront Renoir, and you would think that with my excessive leveling, the area and fight would be piss easy. And not exactly. See, in a recent patch, Sandfall added the ability to increase the HP of enemies and apply a new soft damage cap. While the soft caps aren't necessary, I wanted to see how challenging the finale would be if I scaled everything to have more HP. So for the area, I multiplied everyone's HP by 50, and for Renoir, I cranked that number all the way to 100 times HP, and the results weren't what I hoped. The truth is, even with beefier bosses, Lune could just shrug off any damage they dealt to her with minimal effort. In fact, there was only one attack from Renoir that even came close to killing her, and even then, she survived with a very comfortable 3000 HP. However, this little experiment did allow me to see some attacks I never knew existed, since I just usually end up one-shotting him. So I'll play out some of those moves for you as the credits roll, and if you like what you saw here, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to help build a community, and thank you to all the artists who helped me make this video possible. Until next time, this is Jaffinator, signing off. Mael, you kill-stealing fuck.